am trying to make the most advanced NPC with a cutting-edge dialogue system. But I must admit, I have one big problem. I've never tried to create an advanced NPC, or potentially redesign a traditional dialogue system, and this turned out to be one of the most challenging and intense experiences I've ever had. I'm not gonna lie, I almost lost my mind doing it. Yet, something pulls me to these types of challenges, like a moth to a flame. What I'm thinking of doing is taking something like how dialogue works in Skyrim, with extensive possibilities and choices, and different ways to tell a story. Then I'll mix in a little bit of a game maybe some of you have heard of, called Hey You Pikachu, which was an N64 game that actually allowed you to talk to an on-screen Pokemon using your microphone. Next, I will sprinkle in a little bit of inspiration from a game called Phasmophobia, which allows you to say the names of ghosts to anger them. As always, I would need to study how other games accomplished their dialogue systems and adapt and apply it to my own game, which, without getting into very much detail yet, is a detective horror game where you must interrogate a floating, creepy robot head. I began this process by asking Bezzy, what are some examples of great dialogue systems? It told me first to check out Left 4 Dead. This game in a lot of ways revolutionized how all other games after it would deal with dialogue. For example, if Bill from Left 4 Dead, who is a grizzly war veteran from Vietnam, picks up a gun, this might trigger Zoe, a college student, to say something like, "Oh no, Bill's got a gun," in her own sarcastic and funny way. By doing this, you begin to feel like these two aren't just NPCs, and that they're actually forming, or might already have formed, some type of relationship. Now let's say Zoe randomly gets ambushed by the undead. Bill yells out, "I gotcha, Zoe!" And it really makes you feel like Bill has your back. My mind starts to go wild with how I can incorporate this into my own game. I'm imagining, by using references to the world around you, I can make our NPCs feel so alive. Well, this is a fascinating system, but how does it work? Unlike traditional games, with scripted cutscenes, Left 4 Dead told its story entirely through reactive voice lines. There was no dialogue tree, no cinematics, just contextual quips that triggered based on what the player was doing and how. Nothing like this had ever been done before, as it turns out. And it's all thanks to something Valve created called the VRRS, also known as the Voice Response Rules System. The VRRS works like this. Bill picks up a gun and that triggers an event. The VRRS then cycles through who's around Bill, it finds Zoe, and it checks when the last time she had a voice line was. Seeing that it's been a while, the VRRS then checks to see how important is it that she says this line. For instance, if you're being attacked, yelling out in pain is way more important than Zoe saying something funny to Bill. This is a set of rules. You have a voice line for every situation, between every possible combination of characters. Like I said, nothing like this had ever been done before. And it actually went on to inspire future games like Firewatch, who took Valve's system and built on its back. Now, Firewatch, instead of responding to gameplay events, would have its system respond to emotional context and player intent. Instead of barking out lines, you were bonding with a mysterious woman named Delilah, and with their own set of rules like relationship percentages, such as trust and true or false statements. Has Henry asked about the girl? True. Using this system, it would dictate how emotionally charged our walkie-talkie conversation with Delilah would be. Now, by understanding how these processes work, I felt like I could start to see how you could create a system, a very complex dialogue system. But here's the twist. I wanted to use voice recognition. You see, my idea was to have an organic conversation. No choices, no clear way forward, just you and the killer alone in a room. So I got to work. I first created a voice-to-text system. This was, in a way, a core of the process. Bezzy helped me work out some of the kinks of how it came together. And I asked it basically to create me something that would take these words on the screen and process them. So now that your words were in this form of text, I could then feed them into this program. that I would create using inspiration from Left 4 Dead and Firewatch. Now with the voice-to-text system working, it was time to think about how to actually implement it in my game, Face Interrogation, and with real written words transcribed from what the player was saying. This was a huge jump in progress and a big step forward, creating a super advanced dialogue system and NPC. With that in the bag, I began to envision what would a game look like that took your vocals and had a NPC respond off of what you said. The tricky thing was doing it right, so I began digging for someone who could pull it off. This was when I discovered Project Milo, which was created for Xbox Connect in 2009. I didn't remember this happening at all at the time, probably because I had a 2-year-old and my hands were very full. But upon researching Project Milo, I began to see that the idea was to have this NPC boy who you could speak to through your microphone, and he would respond like a young boy would. He would make eye contact, hand you virtual items, and even react emotionally to your words. Now this game never saw finalization, as I believe the creators probably stumbled on the same issues that I did later on in this video. In fact, with Project Milo, there was a great deal of controversy that it ever worked at all, and that maybe they just faked a lot of the things in the demos they did. And so I began searching again. Perhaps someone else had pulled it off, and I found another tech-style demo. Many of you might remember this as AI tries to guess the only human. Now this YouTube video found a lot of traction. I remember watching it when it came out, and it basically featured historical figures powered by different AI models. They would all react to each other and try to determine which among them was actually the player. A very impressive video. Now I remember our AI boy, Milo, that obviously crashed and burned. But what if I built a game around the same concepts as the AI train car? Well, let me tell you the immediate issues with that. First, we all know what happens when ChatGPT tries to write, and it always ends up with some generic crap. I mean, look at this. I asked ChatGPT to write a captivating crime scene narrative. I kid you not, this is what it said. The detective looked around the crime scene and saw blood and stuff on the floor. He wrote something down in his notebook and knew this was going to be a big case. Really? Now let me tell you, for my game, the story was going to be very important. I knew I needed to handwrite it. It was non-negotiable. The next issue is using online AI in a game like this. For example, every time the AI needs to think about something, whether it's something you say or it's something they say, that makes what's called a API call. Easily thousands of these calls can happen in a single conversation. I would have to pay for each of these API calls myself. And I'm talking this could cost hundreds of thousands of dollars. Do I look rich? Would a rich person have whatever this stain is on their wall? It's actually grout. And so you can see this just didn't make sense for my game. And honestly, you don't see many games like this outside of subscription-based games. It was in that moment I realized there just wasn't anything like what I was attempting to do. Could it even be done? Should it be done? These questions plagued my mind and began to drive me crazy, and I stumbled on my next approach. What was really important, I thought. I was stumped. Luckily, in moments like this, Bezzy had some insight. It suggested, what if we broke down every sentence into intent? And what was really important was the intent of the player. For example, if you say, "Please don't kill me," the intent is pleading. If you say, "I don't think you can kill me," the intent is boasting. Now, instead of creating thousands of lines of dialogue, we could break everything down into intent. And then we could have our suspect, whose name is Judge, ironic, I know, react based off that intent. I thought it was genius, but that quickly faded as I realized just how generic that conversation would be. In fact, it wouldn't really be a conversation at all. I must admit, this sent me down a psychological rabbit hole into what makes a conversation at all. Context matters. Tracking what the player has said matters. These are things we just take for granted in these human-to-human transactions and conversations. Then it came to me. I realized that the path forward was there all along. I remembered what I had learned from Left 4 Dead. What if I could make a system that takes what the player says It then takes the words as a sentence structure and it matches it to a input with the highest percentage. I call this my keyword matching system. And really, Bezzy created this for me in under a minute. And with some fine tuning, it was up and running. It took the voice to text and actually could understand what it should say in response. This is how it works. You say to Judge, "What did you do with the missing girl?" And now in our system, we have all of the possible ways you could say the same thing. And we group these together. We call these keywords. So you could say, "What did you do with Sally?" Or, "Tell me what happened to the girl." All of these words have the same meaning, just a different sentence structure. And this is where it gets mind-boggling. Here's what happened next. The first issue was, even with 100 responses, and every alternate way you could say those same responses, this quickly capped the max amount of characters, like letters and numbers, that a JSON file can even store inside of Unity. A JSON file is like a basic code script. On top of that, we had a problem where the player could say something ambiguous, like, "What do you mean?" And the problem with that is, in order to answer it, we need to have some context of what the player was previously talking about. And here's the final issue with this keyword matching system, is when we started to get so many responses and the player would say a long sentence, there was just a really high probability it would get matched to the wrong response. And oh my god, I know I said that was the final issue, but you know when you're talking to your phone and voice to text says the wrong word in case of what you wanted to say? So now I need to make sure that every word that sounded like another word in that sentence was also included in the possibilities for that response. You can see how this gets insane. There was nothing I could do. During this period of time, I did a lot of thinking to keep myself from going completely insane. I remembered what the philosopher Mikhail Bakhtin once said. Truth is not born inside one person. It is born between people in the process of their dialogue. And then it hit me. I wasn't trying to make the NPC understand words. I was just trying to make it listen. None of this mattered if the player didn't feel heard. And how can I make this NPC understand my words like another human being would? Oh, and guys, if you want to play Face Interrogation, this game I'm talking about, I hid 5 keys to the game, like this one. And if you get one of these keys and type it in Steam, you can unlock the game when it comes out. Now, I explained this issue in its entirety, and it was, about a page to Bezzy. I'm basically saying sort through my BS, because you just need fresh eyes sometimes when you're just digging away. And luckily, Bezzy had another idea for me, and I discovered what would be my next approach to solve this voice-activated NPC situation. Machine learning modules. MLMs. Now these are basically like little specialized AI models, and they run offline. You train them yourself and they learn, they study the context of the story, and they basically work all of the possible dialogue options into a weird digit system, and I barely understand how that works. Now, I had heard of MLMs before, but honestly, I decided, what's the harm in trying to learn? After all, I was doing this to push myself farther than I had ever gone, or thought I could go. And even if I couldn't do it, I would learn from this experience. Now here we go again, right? Surely someone somewhere has done something like this, right? Yes, indeed. I discovered the Replica Studios Smart NPC demo, which basically uses a cloud AI that runs online. In a sense, they have their own open AI system. And I already explained why we can't do online AI. Again, this wasn't correct, and it was just another example of vague AI and an undeveloped story. I'm reminded in this moment of another quote, this one by Roselia de Castro. I see my path, but I don't know where it leads. Not knowing where I'm going is what inspires me to travel it. Perhaps that is what draws me to these types of challenges. The thrill of not knowing, that is what drives me. And so I embarked in the adventure of creating my own machine learning module. And Bezzy created this script that basically takes all of my responses and it scoops them all into a packet. And now the scary part, I have to go outside of Unity. And so I take this packet and I can use it in this thing called Google Colab, which I'd never heard about before, which is a free cloud-based environment for writing and running Python code. especially useful for machine learning. Now, I was actually very grateful to Bezier in this moment because I had never written Python code before, and it basically was like spitting out like these massive things I could just type into Google Colab to like help process the machine learning. And so what happened is I would run this packet through Google Colab, and it runs it through 11,000 possible situational combinations of my words. And throughout this process, it generates an actual awareness of what the player is speaking. And this was a big piece in our keyword system. Context. Days passed. Part of teaching a machine learning module is the time in between. You see, I would make some tiny little tweak to the dialogue code. Then I'd have to generate a packet. Then I'd have to run it through Google Colab. Then that would take half an hour. Then I take it, I put it back into Unity, and then I have to test it. And oh no, that didn't work. Now you have to do it again. And it would take hours and days to even see any type of improvement. Here's the crazy part. It was worse than keywords. I jumped headfirst into making a machine learning module, but I never stopped to wonder if I had the knowledge or capability to do it. You see, I learned later on that these types of things are made by teams of people. Often you study it all throughout college, and you spend years building these finely tuned systems. And to do this on my own was just unrealistic. Now I found myself looking back at all of the options I had exhausted, from keywords to machine learning to online GPTs making API calls. It was clear now, I couldn't do it. At least not now. I find myself so frustrated when I can't figure out these puzzles life presents me. But I think it's important to know the worth of pivoting and not giving up. You see, I had a dream for an advanced NPC, for an incredible dialogue system like the world has never seen, and maybe never will see. In that moment, something sparked or changed in my brain. Maybe there is a reason why we haven't seen it. For years, we've had meaningful experiences in games like King's Quest in 1984, to Skyrim in 2011, 2013, 2016, 2017, 2017 again, and of course 2021. Can we be done with Skyrim? Okay, I love Skyrim. Just come on, we sucked the money dry out of that thing. And throughout the process of these games, we've always been fully immersed. Perhaps it's the way we tell stories. Now think of Ender's Game or Game of Thrones, or any media with game in the title. From beginning to end, we experience the story in its intended manner. We need to feel the story as the writer intends for it to play out. Herein lies a basic fundamental flaw, with the player being able to ask any question at any time, or anything that pops into their head, and using voice recognition. How do you shape a story? What if the player asks something they shouldn't know, or out of the sequence? By letting the player have full control of the dialogue system and being able to say anything they want, it effectively breaks the ability for the artist and writer to tell a coherent story for their players. Now I'm beginning to understand. By guiding the player through these traditional dialogue trees, like the ones we are so fond of in Fallout, we give the player the chance to make their own choices, and those that fall into a rational setting. By doing that, we keep the player immersed, by allowing the story to be told the way it was intended. Sure, there are games like Fallout and Skyrim, and others I grew up with, that give the player many dialogue choices. Though in those games, the dialogue wasn't the focus, the combat generally was. To create an impactful NPC with beautiful dialogue, I would need to find a role model, a game that truly nailed traditional dialogue by creating a truly immersive experience. This is when I discovered Slay the Princess, a game that gives the player so many choices that they always feel in control, and all the while delivering a powerful narrative story. The princess herself morphing based on the player's actions, the environment changing, everything in flux, everything new. So many paths you can lose yourself in the universe. I felt calm then. I realized I didn't need to make something new and insane. And there was a reason all of these voice recognition demos never came to be completed. Technology just isn't there yet. And maybe, just maybe in the future, we can figure out a way to create the feeling that you're having a true conversation, still rooted in the story and using your microphone. But for now, we already have a deeply impactful, tried and true method of a traditional dialogue system. And games like Slay the Princess, they reveal that there's still plenty of innovating to be had with what we already know. And by introducing a unique angle, like hey, you now get to kill the princess instead of save her, they created a completely fresh experience. This was beautiful. This made sense. And in the past, I had already written dialogue trees, like in my game Mother Hub. It was a sense of relief that just washed over me. I could do what I know, and if I nailed it, it would be everything I wanted it to be. I set off immediately, and with help from my Discord, we created a powerful story. I then used a dialogue system to branch these choices out. I then created an emotional calibrator with help from Bezzy, which helps match the dialogue of what he's saying to his facial expressions. I went into depth with his story and that of his victims. I created a twist for the player character that's just insane. And within these characters and understanding the choices you'd make, you can affect everything around you, just like Slay the Princess. I had done it. I had created an advanced NPC and dialogue system, but not by doing something no one's ever done, but by refreshing and envisioning what already works. And rather than flooding the player with many different choices and no impact, I created highly difficult crossroads. And every time you have a choice, you know it's going to vastly affect and change the story. So in this one scene, you're held captive by these evil businessmen, and without revealing too much, they are threatening someone you love. There's a scalpel on the table next to you. You can choose to save your loved one by stabbing yourself in the knee with the scalpel upon their request. Or you can attempt to break free, potentially compromising your loved one. And like in Slay the Princess, you'll find incredible twists you won't expect, like enemies who turn out to be allies, and vice versa. And even moments where you have to decide whether or not to activate a potentially homicidal robot. And then I know some of you will be playing so you can pet Biscuit, the office cat. In this moment I am reminded, Henry Ford said, "I invented nothing new. I simply assembled the discoveries of other men, behind whom centuries of work." I am so happy with how my game Face Interrogation came out. And if you are interested in playing it when it's available, make sure you wishlist it at the link below. And be sure to check out Bezzy if you want to start making your own games. Bezzy, my constant programming companion. This has been Seth O'Dale Studios. Farewell.